Okay, so didn't exactly anticipate this kind of happening. It's perfect timing too. I got everything right back up, and then it flickered for like half of a second, which restarted everything, which set me back another like 8 minutes. So anyway, I'm gonna try this one more time. If it cuts out again, don't worry about it. I'll just get it recorded and out to you guys. Hopefully that won't happen. It'd be nice to get this done tonight. But yeah, I'm still going to cut it off at 7:20, so don't worry about that. I'm not going to make anyone stay. I'll probably keep going past that just to record things, but it's up to you guys if you want to stay or not. So let's get that scene back opened. Pretty sure I got everyone in terms of attendance, but who is R2095? And who is Mo Bursky? And Sindeal? Oh yeah, that's right. Thanks. Cool. Hey, Linda. Okay, cool. I think everyone stopped by at some point, so that's great. I know this is not exactly what I was hoping for, but like I said, storm seems to have passed through. It's funny, power has not really gone out here for a while, but it did today, just for a few seconds. So, alright. Here we go. So, where were we? Okay, so we've just done a planar projection. Planar, like I said, it passes everything. You have to like be aware of directions of things. So, you know, the faces on this side, let me visualize them. What? Why did that happen? Oh, I reversed them. Let me visualize them. So the faces on this side are pointing out, and the faces on this side are pointing this way. So when we do a planar projection through this, we're going to get the right, correct side on this face, on these faces. So we can actually move that out of the way, and Maya has a handy new tool where you can actually just move things by 1 digit, or 1 degree. But then these, we have the reverse side. And this becomes a problem when you're using normal maps, because normal maps are calculated based off of the direction of the normal. So if you had the same normal map on both of these, even though it's going to look right and line up right, when you render it out in here, it's going to look, everything's going to be all flipped and backwards. So you always want to make sure when you're doing your UV layout to have the shaded turned on. I don't know, it should be like that by default, but it isn't. I don't know why it isn't. But then just use this flip selected UVs, and there you go. So then we have the rest of these. That we have to get taken care of, but we're not going to worry about that right now because I want to talk about the other ways to the other tools up here. So the next one you can see is the cylindrical mapping. So we'll use just the cylinder for that. So cylinder by default already has a pretty good setup for it. It has the cylindrical unwrap here, and then the top has these two planar projections, as you can see. But say you change the size of this, you know, you might do a few things, and let's see, maybe you needed to do like a ridged thing, so you did an extrude, or you set this up, and then I don't know, you do something to it and you need to redo it, or you have like some sort of a tube like your arm. An arm is obviously a great example of this. This is when you might want to use something like cylindrical mapping. So this one by default should wrap up around your model. So as you can see, we get another little UI indicator here, this time in the shape of a cylinder. It's literally just projecting from all of these angles. So this is ideal for something like this. You can scale this up if you want to wrap it around. That'll fit it well into the UV space. And again, maybe in face selection mode, we want to do a planar map on these, but we want to do that on the y-axis. So do a planar, go to y, project, move these out of the way, and let's do so double clicking on any UV will actually, this is kind of new and super convenient. Double clicking now selects the whole UV island, so you can just move that out and flip that over. And now, you know, using just a cylindrical unwrap and the two planar projections, we have we have pretty much the same thing. We would just need to do a few scale things to make sure that everything is matching up right. So step 1, yep. See, Tim knows exactly what he's doing. You just wait for a storm to come through, and then you open Maya, and you just let Zeus take care of the rest. Alright. I did not mean to do that. I forgot I had it over here. So, let's close that. 1 second. Come on. Alright. So then finally we have spherical mapping. Spherical mapping is relatively useful for a face, and I'll actually bring one in here so we can take a look at that. Let's do the female body model. That is obviously huge. Scale that down a little bit. Scale that up a little bit. And I'm just going to isolate the head here. So obviously the head has a lot of nooks and crannies, and all of us have heads that we are going to need to UV, and I'm going to get to that soon, but spherical mapping can be a good way to start. Planar sometimes can be nice too, because you can do the planar projection and then just cut the seam back here into an unfold. But let's just see what spherical mapping gives us. So really, I mean, you know, you pretty much just want to go with what is going to be closest to the shape of your object. Scaling this up just to get it in there. And already by default, this is looking really, really nice. You know, you can see, because of this color shift, there's a little bit of overlap. But we could probably get rid of that with some of the UV tools that we have. We could unfold that. But I'm not quite ready to get to those tools yet. Before we do that, one other way that you might want to do something like this, or more complicated objects, and I'll show this again on this one, is using the auto mapping. So auto mapping is essentially just doing a number of planar projections. So you can just think of it as like 6 planar projections, I think, 1 in each direction, and it automatically figures out which orthographic view, so like front, side, back, left side, or right side, depending on your angle, top and bottom. It does a planar projection, and whatever angle your object is facing closest to, it will, let's try, it will project it that way, but it's also going to split it into a bunch of little islands, and that is not always ideal. For simpler shapes, it's not a big deal, because sewing things together can be pretty quick, but sometimes this can kind of create a mess. So you see, if I do this, we get this indicator. We don't really have the ability, like in the other ones, to make changes to this one. We just sort of get what we get. And one of the problems with this sometimes is that it can kind of compress things. So let's see if I can do this one again, but to kind of show you as an example, if I stretch this all the way down, it may be better now. I haven't used the auto map in 2016 yet. I haven't been doing a whole lot of UVing. All right, so that's actually pretty good. I just had a huge thunderclap, so hopefully I don't lose internet again. But you can see it's pretty self-explanatory. The only thing now is we have all these seams. So in UVing, you're bound to have to break your object up into multiple UV islands like this, but you also want to minimize that as much as you can, and that is primarily because every single one of these islands is going to create a seam in your texture. So I could create, let's see, I'm going to create a texture really quickly in the Hypershade, if it comes up. It doesn't seem to want to. Not sure why. Let's try it this way. Oh, that's great. Let's see. Object name, object filter. All right, I'm just going to save this and close. Hold on a second. Okay, there we go. Not sure why. All right, let's just do this. Just do another one real quick. All right. So, close that. I'm just going to create a new blend. Come on, I don't need this. What are you doing? Put the blend on here. And if you aren't already aware, this is something I'm gonna get into, mostly just with blends first. But and we kind of already did this process actually, so I'm not gonna get too into that actually. Forgot that we already did this. I'm just attaching a brick texture to this real quick, so we can see. Oh yeah, I forgot. I also have this other thing now. Key press, spelled with a Q. 2 seconds. So this will actually allow me to. You'll see all the keys that I'm pressing, so you can know exactly what I'm doing. I'm trying to get the software to run right now. There may be better options out there. If anyone knows of any, please let me know. I'm just using the free version of this right now. But you can see in the lower left-hand corner. See, unfortunately, with the free version, they don't let you move where that is. It'd be nice to put it like up here or something, but for now, it's gonna be down here. So, just gonna have to deal with that. All right, so just holding down right-click, assign existing, which is blend. So let's do the auto mapping really quickly and dock our UV editor over here and auto map. So the obvious, let's make a scene that's really obvious. So the reason that you want to try to minimize UV islands is that you want to, you want to avoid texture seams. You don't want people to look at the model and see, like, obviously the goal in all of this is to make things look as clean as possible and to, not try to fool people into not knowing that it's a 3D model. Getting to that level of photorealism takes time, but ultimately one of the first things that you can drill into your head is to try to avoid massive UV seams. So obviously in any model, these are bound to happen. You have to break your model up into multiple pieces. But you can be very strategic about it by hiding the seams in areas like this. So like say this is the armpit of your character. If there's a seam right here, it's going to be a little bit more seamless, or you're not going to notice the seams. Or say that like this piece is covered by a really big thick necklace or something. So you might be able to put a seam under there and it won't be quite as noticeable. So just think about like with the areas of where your character, I think most of you have clothes, so it should be relatively easy. But you usually want to put it at least, at the very least, on the back of your character. But that's all the basic methods. So now I can kind of get into talking about some of the tools. I'm going to actually open a new scene for this. Which one did I want to do? Open a snow girl. So she's got a bunch of different pieces. So you can see with her, I've actually started to lay her UVs out. And this is actually what I did, I think, 2 weekends ago. Not this past weekend, but the weekend before I was doing a UV demo. So some of this stuff might be, like I think I said, this might be kind of, some of you may have seen some of this stuff before. But I think it's good to kind of document it and to talk about it in class when everybody's here. So right now I'm kind of going through the process with her where I'm breaking her up just into multiple parts. So I'll talk about that, and then after talking about that, I will show you how I'll go through the process of actually, I'll probably redo her face so we can see how that was done. But initially when laying them out, I'm just trying to get them as evenly laid out as possible and trying to kind of get them into these discrete chunks. So right now, I think I started to break her up by cloth, so I'm trying to make cloth one thing and then skin. Even though skin is very minimal, I still want to give a lot of attention to her face. So I'll probably do face, eyes, and possibly hair all in one. I'm not sure yet. The hair takes up actually more space than her face does, so I'm not quite sure. But you can see I was kind of strategic with her. I'm going to be having seams on her texture here. That's my plan. So, anytime that you actually have a physical seam in a piece of cloth, why not use that as a place to put your UV seam? I think especially with clothing, I always try to think of it the way that like a seamstress or you know, someone who sews would do it. How would they put a jacket together? And again, this comes into reference a lot of the times. You know, look at these kind of jackets and figure out, you know, they'd probably put a seam here. Obviously, there's going to be something under here because these are like two flaps. You can always hide a seam under here, which I did because, you know, we're never going to see that. And then her, I wanted to have the ability to still have her character work kind of without the scarf. So that's why I've got some of this extra stuff under here. You can see that I've got her collar split out down here. So just think about these things. And another good way to kind of manage that. All right, Storm's hitting Surge now. So we'll see. Might lose him. Let's see, I don't want to get ahead of myself here. So I'll talk about the shader stuff next. But yeah, so think about how you want to break it down. So for her, I think I've got these little clasps are all sort of fit in there. And they're all different ways to pack things. So actually, let's start with the scarf. I'll show you some tools with the scarf. So a lot of times to isolate things, I'll create a render layer again. Because render layers allow me to add whatever I want to them. I can shift select and I can remove everything else. So now this is all that I have in my render layer. So first thing, in the UV texture editor, one of the most useful tools, two of the useful tools, are the show shade, toggle shade UV, and then this new thing, at least I think it's new, the checkered tiles. So you used to have to make a material that would have some sort of a checkerboard or something like that on it, and that would give you a preview of whether or not your UVs were stretching. Because ultimately what we want to do is, you know, we don't want to avoid stretching. What you're really just trying to do is make it that every single face here is the exact same size and shape as it is here. And then this little button here, the distortion, tells you how close you are to achieving that. So basically the way that this works, and again, this is another area where you're always going to get a little bit of stretching. That's just going to happen. But you want to minimize it. You want to have as small of a gradient as possible here. So you can see this is pretty close. We have a little bit of red, but it's a very faint red. And we have a little bit of blue here, but it's a very faint blue. And then around the neck, I'm not too worried about that. That's very stretched out, but the neck's not going to be seen, so we're not too worried about that. I could cut the neck off if I wanted to, and then I could get it a little bit closer. But I'm not, you know, I'm not too concerned. So you can see, though, it's red basically when it is being squished a little bit. So if I were to scale this down even more, it's just going to get a darker and darker and darker shade of red. And then on the flip side of that, going bigger and bigger and bigger is going to give me a much more rich shade of blue. So ultimately what we're shooting for is white. We want very, very little contrast in here. Now these things are pretty dark red, and that's because these are back of the head areas and inside the mouth area, and I'm never going to see any of that stuff. So I'm, you know, sometimes you can be strategic with it and think about, you know, for the most part, anything that's outward facing, we want to get the exact same amount of resolution, just so the model looks consistent. But if it's an area that's never going to be seen, such as also the underside of the dress here, you can see I scaled that way down because we're not going to see it, so we don't want to waste valuable texture space on that. So let's do a quick one for this. So this, we could do, a lot of times I'll do all three, just sort of see what I get. I think Spherical Mapping might get me close, but it might not give me the seam that I want, so I might just try to start with Cylindrical. And that brings up a couple options over here, too. I actually want to rotate mine, I think. Hold on a second. Two ways you can do this. You can click on this, which gives you the... sorry. Alright, so I'm doing Cylindrical. If you click on this little piece here, it brings up your... you can kind of move the projection around this way. The problem is I want to rotate it, and it's not giving me... It gives me, like, the free rotation, but that's kind of dangerous. So... let's see. I want to flip it the other way. Projection center, so I want to rotate, I think, on Y by 180 degrees. these. Yeah. So now we're doing it from the front, so we'll push the seam to the back. So we'll see this is looking kind of funky. I'm going to turn that off now. And again, because it's cylindrical and because I have these top and bottom pieces, you know, I'm kind of thinking that maybe an automatic mapping would be even better. So I'm going to do that. Alright, so that actually is pretty clean. I have a couple of little islands here, but this gives me the opportunity to show off some of the tools that we can use to alleviate that. So I'm turning on my checkerboard again. I can see it over here. I wish there was a little bit more contrast, but you can see already because of that projection we have a few little stretching pieces here and some seams that we want to get rid of. Especially here, we don't want a seam like that. A seam here wouldn't be too bad because this is sort of the fold in the scarf. And that actually is what I want. I think I'm going to want a seam right there. So I'm going to start off just by selecting the edges where I actually want a seam to be. And I'm shift selecting, double clicking on all of these edges. Because I'm going to use, after I have all the edges selected, and I think I have them all now. Turn this off for a sec. These three. So as you can see, it selects their adjacent, the correct edges over here. So now I'm going to cut this, but only in the UV space. Anything that I do over here, all that it's doing is affecting the display over here, but it's not affecting the actual makeup of the model. So doing any kind of a slice or so, or merge or anything in the UV area, it is not actually affecting the model at all. It's only affecting how the image that you map to it is laid out. So I'm going to cut it there. And then I'm also going to take care of some areas. Let's see, did this one pretty well, but I think I'm missing. Let's see. So I'm going to take my top and bottom and get them out of the way. So I'm double clicking on the UV, shift selecting, and I'm moving them over here. And you can just move things around while you're working. Eventually we'll pack everything back together within this one space. That's the goal, I think, for our model. I think I'm going to let you guys do 2 UV maps, so if you want to do the one for the body and one for the clothing, that's fine. But it's still a good practice to kind of learn to pack them in, but we're not there yet. So this has 2 holes in it right now, and I don't want those holes. So anytime that I want to sew things together and kind of rearrange where my seams are, I always go to edge mode. Because edges are the most predictable thing in UVs. It can be kind of complicated because every vertex actually has 4 UVs. So like if I select this vertex here, let's see, vertex, and then I convert to UV selection, you'll see that there's a bunch of different UVs here because I'm right on the corner. So I have a UV here, a UV here, and then I have one here. However, this would immediately split into 2 if I were to cut this edge out and move it. So again, select the vertex, and you see there's like 4 UVs. So edges, for whatever reason, are just very reliable, so work with edges. And I am basically just going to select the 2 edges that I want here, and I'm using this tool right here is the move and sew the selected edges. So it's going to take the biggest piece, it's going to pretty much stick that in place, and it's going to take the smaller piece and move it to it and sew the edges. So most of my work in UVing, the initial work is doing just those edge selections and cuts, and then just doing move and sew with different edge selections. So here, I can actually just kind of shift select and drag all these, and you'll see obviously I'm selecting all of these, but these are already merged, so it doesn't really matter if you select things that are already merged. I just want to make sure that I don't select outside edges, because then that's going to pull things that I don't want. So right now I just want this little island here, so I'm going to move and sew that, and then I want this island as well to be reattached to that island, and that is pretty good. Let's check this out again. And I think another thing I want to do, I want this edge to sort of be its own thing. Because I want, this is going to be sort of the area that that's not what I want. So this could actually use slightly better topology, but let's see. I'm actually going to just take this circle in here. And might not move the whole thing. Let's see. I could probably even delete some of these faces, but for now I'm not going to. So let's cut that, move that. Oh, didn't work. Cut, because yeah, so then I have to go back to UV selection. Just double click again to get that island. Let's do the same thing up here. And you can also do this with faces and then convert to edges. Let's see. But always kind of go back and forth. You want to see. So basically what I'm saying is I don't want the seam to actually be right here. And I realized that it was. So I need to, I can, however, have a seam here. So if I cut that, yeah, that's good. So let's move that out of the way. And, okay, that's actually great. That edge loop almost made it all the way around. So I'm going to cut this one too and do the same thing. These. So these are kind of my junk pieces. I could probably even delete these faces. I'm not going to right now, but I probably could. Because I can hide the seams in there. The model's going to kind of hide a lot of that. You can see her face covers both of that, and then her body covers the other seam. So we have our rim, top and bottom rim here. Let's see. But again, pretty much the only tools that I ever use are the move and sew, and then edge selection, and then using the double click. And then we get it to unfolding, but I'm not quite there yet. So, all right, I'm just going to kind of quiet down and just put this together now. Or I might keep talking, we'll see. Let's follow this around. So this is 1 tube that goes all the way around. So I think I'm going to put the, let's take a look at the model. I think I'm going to put the seam kind of like right along here, or like right here maybe. I need to have one seam. Yeah, so let's do this. Let's cut that. And then I'm just going to, I know that no matter where they are, this is going to sew onto the right part that I want. And okay, so then let's go up here. The other tools, so I lied, I actually use a couple other tools, I just kind of forgot. So I use the rotate selected a lot. These will rotate by chunks of 45 degrees. So rotate that twice, and then just to make sure that the orientation is right. Okay, that's actually needs to be on the top right now. So then I'm just going to do a free translation to do that. And let's see, so this is the next edge loop, and that's going to select this piece. So let's see which one we get. So again, I'm just selecting the edge ones. I don't want the top or bottom because then that's going to attach to this and this again. So that must have been the smaller piece, so it moved it up here. Let's rotate this back. Make sure up is still up. It is not. So flip it back around. Just kind of eyeballing it right now. Let's see. So then that should be the end of that little tube. I want to see where this edge loop is because, yeah, that's a little funky. I need to find the rest of these. So let's do that. Okay, so that's going to be these. So for this, you'll see if I do this move and sew right now, it's going to really heavily distort it because it's not going to change the shape of this. It only changes the shape of the ones that are already there. So I thought that I cut. Okay, I hadn't cut that. That's right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just split every one of these. And what that's going to do is make them all into their own little island. But when I sew them all on, you'll see that it doesn't actually distort them very much. And then I can just sew all their edges together. So now I just got to come in, and I'm just hitting G here to kind of sew all these back together. It might seem a little tedious, but it really only takes a few minutes. Let's see, I definitely am missing something here. Just pull that. Cut this edge. That does not belong. So this is kind of the process you're going to have to go through for some of your clothing. I think for some people, UVs are wonderful. For other people, they can be very frustrating. It all kind of depends on if you like tedious work or not. I find it can be, like, you know, somewhat meditative, I guess. Just sort of you've been working really hard on your model, now you just sort of relax. You can kind of let your brain wander a little bit and just sort of put these puzzle pieces together. Not too bad of a way to do things. Just sew that in. And let's get the final few pieces here. So it looks like, yeah, I'm going to have to cut this one up too. So same thing, just dragging over the whole thing and the edge select, cut all of them. And also when the nice thing with edges is, edges connect too. So we see the adjacent edge where this wants to be connected is right here. So if I select all of these, I can see more or less, okay, this is going to it's going to want to sew a bunch up here, but I don't want that. I want like this edge loop. Oh no, I do. Okay, wait. Aha. I think I have one more piece that needs to come in here. Yep. Okay. But now we see we have almost this whole thing around here. Getting really close. So this looks like it's going to be part of it too. Just cut that up. And just because I built this in quads, I kept talking about quads with all you guys, and this is a big reason why I like to work in quads. It's much easier when you're doing your UVs to kind of break down and predict what you're going to need to kind of finish your islands off. If you're working in triangles, you get a lot of things like this, and you can't tell which part's going to go with what. For her, fortunately, at this point, I don't think anything's really triangulated much anymore. I have a few triangles in here, but they're not really, they're not a big deal. There's not going to be a lot of warping or anything. So, what else? Where is this? Okay, so that's going to go up here. So, yeah, a lot of what makes quads so important is just that it makes it easier for you to work. Everything makes sense, and not only that, but a lot of the times when you're modeling, somebody else might pick a model up from you later, and you might not, you might be out sick, and a different modeler has to do the work that you were doing for them. So if they have to come in behind you, and your scene's all messy, and everything's triangulated, and it's really hard to figure out where things are, that can make you kind of a difficult person to work with. So it's good to get into the practice of these things. Again, there are always exceptions. You can see here, like I have a triangle here. And that's because that's the way that I have her normal map running, and that's just what I wanted. So let's get the rest of these done. We're at 6:45 already. Yeesh. All right. Let's get into work mode here. So I'm going to go a little bit faster for a minute. Select everything to see if I have it all. Nope, I still need to get this underneath part, which is going to be this. Okay, so I'm just going to select all the way around. I'm just going to see what happens. And now I'm going to use this as an example to show you the unfold tool. All right. So this is less than ideal. But say this is what you have or whatever reason, and you need to just kind of make this work. So there are a couple different ways you can do this. By default, Maya's unfold. Basically, the main way that we're going to do this is to unfold it. So Maya has an unfold tool. They have a new one called Unfold 3D. I actually don't like to use this just because it's 100%. It's almost 100% automatic. You can change a few settings, but like Maya's kind of starting to go in the direction of a lot of the other software out there, which a lot of people like that, but it's like they take away options, which might make it easier to use theoretically, but you also lose a lot of control. And I personally don't like that, at least with this tool. So I always switch to the legacy, which is the way that it used to work. And the way that this one works is I can choose to, this is the main reason why I like to use this one, because I like to pin the unselected UVs. So that means if I select all of these, it's only going to unfold the stuff that's selected. This stuff's going to get pinned. And that's important because you want to leave certain ones unfolded, because when it runs the unfold algorithm, it is kind of trying to make it fit to the size of everything. So as an example, if I select the entire model and just do my unfold, that's not a terrible way to do it, but sometimes when you do that, for whatever reason, it just starts, it'll like shrink, it'll just do all kinds of weird things. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to leave some of these edge ones alone up here and over here. Then just select everything through the middle and do the unfold. You'll see this way it maintains the scale that I already had. And then to just sort of soften all that, I'll select the ones that I had deselected and just hit it one more time. But now, you see we have a very nice clean loop around here, and it was just one quick unfold. There is a new unfold brush, which is really nice, so I can select all these UVs, and let's see, I think it is this one. We have our unfold tool. So this actually gives me a brush where I can do pretty much what I just did, but just like kind of one vertex at a time. And I also have the option, so you'll see that this is actually trying to, this again is another automatic thing where it's kind of tricky. And the more you go over it, it's kind of hard. I honestly don't fully understand how it's working yet. I've only been using this tool for a couple weeks actually. So it's still minimal distortion, but because this is sort of a cloth thing where I might want to have a cloth fabric kind of texture going around this, I want to actually have it laid out more flat. So I'm just going to undo all that, and I'm going to redo the fold the way that I had it before, or the unfold. Again, this is the button that we want here, the little checkerboard with the box thing. Automatically, yeah, so we're not worried about that yet. So I can also just shift select to get that, the other ones in there. So you end up finding yourself doing a couple of these, and like if there's a little distortion, just kind of keep hitting G. I think I want to scale it back down a little bit. And let's see, we got one more left. And what do we have here? Let's see. That's where my seam is, so just get that one. No, I'm supposed to have a seam here. Cut that, selecting these edges. That's not what I want. Okay, so apparently this one is going to pull this, so I'm going to cut that. And here we're getting a little bit weird. Oh yeah, I wanted a seam there. So actually this is just going to be... Oh, cool, yeah, so I can just put my seam there. That's great. This one works out very nicely. Alright, I'm just going to have to pull this in at some point, I think. Let's try out the... let's see what we get here. Did I cut this yet? I haven't cut this yet, so I need to do that. Alright, I'm actually going to stop for a second because we're already at 6:50. I'm going to leave this alone for just a moment, and I'm going to show you another thing that can be really useful, especially if you're doing in a model where you want to use two different texture spaces. So it's a good idea to... I'm going to open my Hypershade real quick. Hope it'll work this time. So it can be smart to break your model down early by material selection. So in my case, you know, I want to make all the cloth objects part of one texture layout. And I think I'm actually going to make the shoes and maybe the hair and the face a different one. Mostly just because that's just going to fit well for me. So I have those selected. Actually, the first thing you want to do is make two materials. So I'm going to make Blinn. I just like to work with Blinn as my default because it has a specular channel, which the Lambert does not. Hopefully later I can get into some of the mental array materials. But for now, we're just going to stick with our standard materials. So I'm going to go with Blinn. I'm going to map both inputs and outputs on that. And you'll see if I select it over here. I'm not going to attach a texture to it right now. I'm just going to change the color to something really, really obvious. And I'm also... I mentioned that I like having spec and reflection, but I don't actually want those right now. So I'm going to make the clothing red. And I'm just selecting all the things that I want in there to be red. And I'm also going to name this clothing. And then I'm going to make one more that I'm going to call skin shoes. Or no, I'm going to call it body shoes because it's going to be your hair too. Body and shoes. Remember, always try to label things. It makes everything easier. I'm going to make this one blue. And get the... I'm going to put the eyes in there too. That's everything in there. And just get the shoes. body to that. Turn down my spec and my reflectivity. And now, again, I did this in the master layer, but you could do it in a different layer. You could just do, and I'm actually going to do that now. I'm going to grab everything and put it into a new render layer. I'm going to call this material assignment. And then back here, I'm just going to go right back to assigning the Lambert, standard Lambert. But you'll see that this keeps... Okay, well, it didn't, I guess, because I had it linked to that, so... Anything that I assign after the fact is going to stick around. Sorry, these little button things don't like to be selected. Okay. So that's everything for clothing. Shift select to invert my selection. I did it in the master layer again. Alright. Sign. Sign. So now in my master layer, I have the Lambert. I can work on it this way. In my UV, I just have the UV thing. Modeling, don't worry about that. So render layers are not necessarily for this, but they, you know, render layers are more like if you had different material assignments, different passes you want to do. If you wanted to do like a depth pass and an occlusion render and all those things. It's more for like setting up compositing, but it's also a really useful tool for just giving things multiple material assignments or isolating models that you want to work on. There's also the isolate button that I've shown you guys, isolate selected, but sometimes that creates weird issues. Sometimes you want to have like 2 or 3 things, and that can get messed up the way group selections work and everything. So it's a lot of times I like to work, pretty much every time I end up making a couple render layers just to work with. Now, if I'm doing like a big render export, then I'm probably going to get rid of them after I'm done with everything. But usually I'll be bringing the model into another file anyway. So that's a good idea for planning. So I would definitely suggest this ahead of time. This can change. You know, I could decide, you know what, I think the scarf just needs to go with the shoes for some reason. That's fine. But generally, you know, try to keep it with, keep things separated, and do it this way. You can also, if you want to, you can do a higher resolution texture map, and you can just map everything into one. But I'm totally, and that's a great practice. If you can do that and create a good-looking model, a good-looking character, that's awesome. That's really, really good experience. But 2 texture maps is not that unheard of, and, you know, I think it's good practice. So, let's see, where are we? Let's look at Hypershade again for a minute. They've changed it a little bit, so anyone who's worked in like Maya 2014 or before, it didn't look like this before, but it's still essentially, it's just the same, it's the same thing as before, it just looks a little different. For something like a blend, it's pretty, let's see if I can open the, property editor? Yeah, dock this over here. It's pretty basic stuff. You know, if we want to map a texture in here, we could do that. And this now is just, I'm just talking about the material editor. I'm not actually, let's ignore the fact that this is attached to a model right now. So these are all, you know, this is a different look from everything else, and this is called node-based editing, and a lot of software is using node-based editing now. If you get into Unreal, everything is done through a node-based editor, including even programming if you choose to do it that way. A lot of compositors out there, Nuke uses this too. And all that it is a node is just a little box that has a set of instructions inside of it. So here we have our main material node. We've called it clothing, and we see all these different options that we have. Because it's a blend, we have a color channel, we have an ambient color channel, we have incandescence, matte opacity, and so on. And we can plug textures into any of these, we can plug ramps into any of these. So for example, say I wanted some sort of like an X-ray look, I could plug a ramp in here. And then, you know, my place 2D texture, this tells it how to map, but if I wanted to override that, I could create, what's it called? I forget. It's been a little while since I've set this up. You see a lot in the medical animations of this style. It's facing ratio, but it's not. Sampler info. So if I create a sampler info node, where did that go? Put it all the way over here for some reason. So this changed too, so I might mess this up the first time. So yeah, so I want to do facing ratio into the U, just into one coordinate here. So I'm going to break this. Don't worry, this is not really that important. I'm just kind of showing you that you can do a lot of interesting things. I think V is what I want. I'm going to plug this into the incandescence. I just want out color. So this is the nice thing, is you can actually connect specific attributes now. You could do this before, but it was all sort of hidden. So now, you know, I can click on out color and drag that into, well, I'll do it into color first to make it obvious. Okay, and I actually want to reverse this, I think. Nope, I didn't want to reverse it. I just want to reverse the ramp, actually. So, black on the other side. So you can see this actually gives me this cool thing using the camera's facing ratio. So any angle that I rotate to, I have to turn on 6. Does this find anything? Any angle that I turn to will put, you know, the white along the edge. So that's kind of a neat thing. No need to worry about that right now, but there's just to show you, like, there's a lot of flexibility in having a node-based editor. You can really sort of like fake things quite a bit. You can take, you know, an alpha channel and plug that into, so say you had like a PNG and your alpha channel had some sort of texture on it. You could use that alpha channel to plug into like the specular map or something like that. But anyway, this is definitely more than you need to think about right now. But I just wanted to kind of show you, you know, once we attach a texture to this, it puts it into the color. Let's actually, you know, then we assign which texture. We want to do this brick texture. But then say we want to use the ramp to do incandescence, so we get a little bit of both. You know, and then, so then when we look at this and we hit render, we get nothing because it's not mental ray. So let me just switch to mental ray. Oh, and I need to assign the material too. Guess that would help. Clothing, I think it was. So now we have this ridiculous looking texture that has a facing ratio angle being plugged into the incandescence. So you can see it's actually doing the opposite of what we want. So anything away is doing this. And then we have a brick texture on there too. And then the nice thing too, you can kind of come in here and just delete connections if you decide you don't want those things that way anymore. You just want to go back to, you know, plain old red for our clothing. So it'll leave these things here. These things will still exist. So at any time you can, if you just are finding that you have tons and tons of extra nodes, and you know, you can toggle through them here. But if you want to get rid of them, you can always just go to Edit, Delete Unused Nodes, and anything that's not attached to a material that's applied to a model will be deleted. Excuse me. So I'm going to put everything back as a Lambert, and finally I'm going to end just by doing a quick look at how to do the face. Are there any questions right now? I know this is sort of not that interactive of a process right now. I just have a lot of stuff that I kind of need to tell you guys. Some of this might be familiar. Hopefully it's familiar. When it's familiar, it's always a little bit easier to do it. And I'm actually going to share with you guys a video. Eric actually put some videos together too that kind of cover a lot of the same stuff that I'm talking about. I think he doesn't quite go into as much depth in it because they're shorter videos. All right, thanks, Vincent. So yeah, I'll just keep moving forward. So you've probably seen stuff like this before. This is, I'm pretty happy with this layout. But actually, I'm going to do this on, I'm going to save this, I'm going to actually do it on another character. So, as you can see, this character has no UVs right now. So, I'm going to imagine that she has clothes on, and I'm going to think of, you know, all right, well, how do I want to split this out? You know, I'm probably going to put a seam around here, because you got to think about distortion, too. If I try to put the face with anything else and try to attach it and sew it together, it's going to get really distorted. Yeah, I'm going to have this, if everything went well, I have it set to be recording. Twitch has an option where I can record and then I can export it to YouTube. So as long as that all goes well, you will definitely be able to see this video again. If not, like I said, there is the reference video that Eric made, and if that's not enough, I could probably make another video of pretty much this stuff. There is already a video where I mostly do all the same stuff with maybe a little bit more advanced information that's on YouTube. Alright, Serge wants to know how we export UVs. So we don't need to worry about that yet. We're not going to worry about that until we're in texturing, but it's pretty easy. You literally just... It's right here in the polygons tab. There's just UV snapshot. So I don't have any UVs right now, but basically you set the size. I usually work at 4096, which is 4K. I work at that, and then I'll usually, you know, a lot of the games that I'm working on right now, the 3D viewer that we're using is very low resolution because it has to run in a web browser. So I've been lowering all of my artifact UVs to 1024 by 1024. But it's always good to work at a higher resolution than you need because that kind of future-proofs your model. You know, maybe you have a model that you really like, but you're having, you know, for a video game in particular, you know, like maybe you're limited to 2K maps for a video game right now, but new console comes out, it's time to make the HD remake of that game. Well, you already did everything at 4K, so now you can just basically replace the image files that you saved as 2K as 4, and you don't have to do any extra work. But yeah, PNG I use because you want to have an alpha channel. I always keep everything else the same. And then you just browse to where you want to save it. By default, it'll go to Maya Images. I don't have anything right now, but I can show you what it would look like. I'll just do a quick planar projection. So that's probably not ideal for the body, but for now, let's just see how it looks. All right, and then that'll close. And I'll open Photoshop. And you can see I've been playing the witness and taking a lot of notes for myself using Photoshop. Let's see, R34, Maya, Images, out UV. So you can see it's kind of hard to see right now. Let me just open the layer. So anytime I bring in a UV map, first thing I do is make a new layer, hit D to make sure this is at the default. If it's not, we can just do the flip or hit this button. And then I do Shift F5 to fill it with the foreground color. And there we go. And last thing that I do is I always do a level to kind of make sure everything stands out really well. I go to adjust levels. Because there's an alpha channel, you'll have a few pixels around the edge that are darker because it's trying to fade. So then I just drag this level all the way up to white. And you can see it's just making every pixel in the entire layer pure white. And then that stands out, you know. So then you can come in under here and start painting your colors in, but we're not there yet. But now you've at least seen how to do it, you know, and make everything red. And the fun thing too is you could even leave the wireframe on and then put wireframe, then use that in your texture map if you wanted to render out a wireframe. That's one way to do it. So anyway, so I'm gonna work on just the face for now. I think from here on up is probably a good good way to do this. And I actually will sometimes use the UVs. So actually you can see you can use the UVs to kind of create interesting selections for yourself too. So I'm actually gonna put it here in case I have a clothing line, you know, so I might have a shirt, and the lower you can put it the better. So I'm gonna cut my UVs. Then I'm going to double click anywhere, which is going to give me the full body selection, but not the head. I'm just going to move the body out of the way for now. Move it down here. And now I have the head. So now I can just select the head by faces, and I can do a, let's see, automap gives me this, which is really nice for the side, but man, it's not going to work quite well enough. So let's try cylindrical. So cylindrical, this gets me pretty close. I think I'm going to go with this. But I'm going to do two things. Depending on the realism of your ear, because mine's moderately realistic here, I'm actually going to separate this, and I'm going to be very careful when I do my textures to minimize that seam. So I'm just selecting this edge loop around here. And again, one thing we were talking about is working in halves. So this is the perfect time to cut my model in half. So I know for delivery and everything, it's like I'd like to see things duplicated, but you can always go back and do this. just, you know, model looks more complete if it's already been kind of duplicated. So mouth bag, I can cut that here. I want to, you know, I might, when she's talking, you might see the mouth open a little bit. So I want to hide the seam just a little bit down in the lip to prevent a seam from showing up when there's distortion. I'm just going to cut that. Now I'm going to select that UV. Pretty sure this one's going to be part of it. Move that out of the way. Did I already cut this? I did not cut the ear. Whoops. Let's go back and do that. So basically that's my process. I pick one of these that works. Cylindrical, auto mapping would have actually worked pretty well too, but I'm going to go with cylindrical for now because I think for a head that works pretty well. So I do my one projection. It gets me, you know, 90% of the way there, and kind of one of the things you find a lot with 3D is the first 90% of any process somehow always just happens really, really fast, and then the rest of your project is actually doing that last 10%. I think that's one of the things that can be kind of frustrating with doing 3D, but it's just kind of, you get used to it. So it's kind of good to know up front that that's just sort of how it is. It's the fine-tuning that really ends up being the time-consuming element. So now, you know, I do my big auto map, and then before doing any unfold stuff, I come in and I break off the pieces that I want to break off. Again, the eyes. Just, again, another reason why working in quads is so great. I can come in, you know, if this was triangulated or if this just wasn't good edge topology, I wouldn't be able to just come in, double-click, cut, and move. But because I was very careful with how I built this, it's very easy to do that. So the last thing that I want to keep in mind, because I'm working in a mirror mode here, I'm going to want to sew this back together at some point. So I pretty much want to lock down these UVs. There's not like a tool where I'm going to use to lock them, but I need to remember that these UVs need to stay flat because I need to mirror this and sew them all back together. So for now, I'm just going to do this by selecting all of them and then just shift selecting, not shift control selecting, so I invert my selection. And then I'm just going to use unfold. Let's see what I get, and turn this on, and it's not showing up over here for some reason. It doesn't always do it. That's kind of annoying. So one of the advantages, I guess, of actually mapping a texture to it is that it always works. For some reason, sometimes this button apparently doesn't really work. But I can take a look at the distortion, and you can see it's pretty ugly right now. So I'm actually going to set this up. I'm assigning a new material, just giving it a blend. One second. I know we're getting pretty close to 720, but I think... Okay, I actually already had a UV thing set up. So you can see this is not really great right now. It's not terrible, but like the face is getting way less topology than the rest of the body. And that's not really something that I want. Someone is here, but I can't get that right now. I think it's just a delivery. So let's undo everything that we just did. Oh, man. Yep, and we will crash Maya. So, one second. This just happens sometimes. I think I tried to do too many undos too quickly. Okay. To be back up. Sorry, where is this? Example files, UVs, female body. I have to do all this over again, I think. Pretty quick this time, though. Alright, so no problem. So we'll do our cylindrical. And that's just to give it something. It really doesn't matter. That looks hilarious, though. That's a terrifying creature. Okay, so let's split this off. This doesn't matter right now. Get that out of the way. Select these faces. Let's do the cylindrical map one more time. It's not quite as horrifying now. Turn this on, hit save. So again, just coming in. I'm actually going to not work in symmetry this time. Let's see what we get without that. The only disadvantage now is I got to kind of sneak in here and do this twice. Not that big of a deal. Just inverting my selection, moving those out of the way. Let's get inside the mouth here. I think this is the edge loop. No, this is the edge loop I want. Cut that. Okay. Invert my selection, move that out of the way. Let's do the ears. So I had to do a few triangles back here to get the ears to work because I need a little more topology. I probably could have done a better job with this. This is not a finished model though, so always go back. Not a big deal. So got that ear. I'm gonna work in symmetry. What am I thinking? Be easier. So just face selection, just deleting these faces as I go. Looks like this is out of line here. Just checking something real quick. Okay. Let's get that ear. So this might be an example of where using the new unfold works a little bit better. Particularly because, and once we do the mirror, we're still going to do a little bit more of the unfolding. Actually, yeah, I can probably try that real quick now. UV selection. Okay. So little things too. Anytime you have these, unfold, a quick unfold will take care of that. Do just these. So you see that sets me off a little bit, but I can just use this tool, which is another super useful tool. These are the align tools, all four of these, so they will align to whatever direction the arrow is pointing. So you can see if I use that, it'll flatten them all in that direction. So that's another good way, like if your model does get a little bit out of control. Just doing soft selection. A little too soft. You know, when you're doing your unfolds, sometimes these things will just get kind of moved around, and that's not a big deal. You can always just come in and, let's see, come in and fix that. So here's another example that I can use where I can turn on, this is where it gets really useful having the option to use the legacy version of unfold, because I can lock the edge. I can pin UV borders, so this way I can unfold everything around the eye loop, and because that eye loop is an edge, it's going to pin those in place. Because otherwise, you saw, if I don't have that turned on, the eye will just kind of intersect with itself, which is not really a good thing. That's layout. So anyway, so that's nice. But, you know, we want to, these edges are really stretched right now, so let's do the UV blend. I'm turning off the texture mode because I hate seeing that when I'm working. You can see already this is looking kind of nice. A little bit pinched in the neck, but that's not too big of a deal. So let's go to unfold. I'm going to change the pin options and just kind of go through one piece at a time. Sometimes you kind of have to do it that way. We can fix that part later. We want to make sure again that we don't touch those edges. So actually, let's see what we get from this tool. The new unfold. So this actually, yeah, that's going to do that for us. That's really nice. So really, this is a great tool to use. It really works quite well. So I think when I said that like Maya now has some new stuff that helps, this is really that new stuff. I can hold B down to change. So I can actually even come in and sort of do some of this, and then I'll come in later. Maybe not quite so much. And here's actually what I'm going to do. I'm going to do my mirror now. Let's just get everything off here. I know, just leave that alone. Sorry. Do my mirror, make sure everything is welded. It is not. There seems to be a problem here. So I'm going to select, let's see, this edge loop should go all the way around. I'm just going to scale it in holding J, which will snap it. And then holding X, just make sure that I snap it to the center pivot again. And let's do our mirror now. And that looks better. 0.003. Yeah. Hitting 3 just to make sure. So you can see we're kind of pushing the seam back here. So the forehead, there's no seam at all. Our seam starts here because this is underneath the hairline. So usually, so again, try to keep the, you know, go above the forehead line for when you start to branch out here. So now the problem with mirroring, unfortunately, yep, I see that, Vincent. I'll be done in probably a minute. I might go a little bit over, so if you guys want to sign off, that's fine, but this will be on YouTube probably by tomorrow sometime, so don't worry about it. Actually, I will stop here. So basically what I'm looking for is by Sunday, I just want to see that this process has been started. The sooner that you finish this, the better off you're going to be, because then you can start working on textures sooner. UVing is just one of those kind of annoying things you just kind of have to do in order to move to the next step. It doesn't change your model at all, but you're laying the model out in such a way that you can start putting textures on it. So Sunday's work in progress. There is a Sunday work in progress. Again, as always, it is just a completion. If you turn something in, you get points for it. If you don't turn anything in, you get nothing for it. So just turn something in. That's all I'm asking. And just get this started. You know, try to, if you're happy with your body already, then maybe just do the body for now. If you think all of your clothing is done, do the clothing. If you think the clothing's done, but you still want to do some modeling on the hands. But keep in mind, really, really, really wrap up your model at this point. You really want to be wrapping it up this week if you can. Because once you start laying UVs out, you don't want to have to go back and do them again. And if you keep modeling over top of stuff, you start having to re-UV. So anyway, it is 7:20 now. I'm going to finish the head. But if you guys want to sign off now, just keep in mind, Sunday by 10 or so, anytime Sunday really, anytime this weekend even. I'm not going to be able to do a Twitch stream this weekend. We've got a lot of stuff going on, and it's kind of important family stuff, and I'm not really able to cancel any of it. So there's going to be no stream this weekend. But if anyone needs help with anything, let me know. I will try to put together a short animation or a short video on how to do maybe some other UV stuff. Or if you have anything, just upload your model and let me know. But at the very least, everyone get some version of a slightly modified or slightly UV'd or fully UV'd if you feel so inclined model by Sunday. So thanks so much for coming, guys. I know this is not ideal. Hopefully this is the last time we have to do this. At the very least, I guess we got to avoid dealing with the storm, although the storm did kind of mess up the stream earlier on. But yeah, thanks for signing on. It was really great to see. I think pretty much everybody showed up, so that's awesome. Thank you, guys. So I'm just going to finish the head now and call it a night. So let's see. So when you mirror, it duplicates your UVs and flips the normals, unfortunately. Hopefully, in the future, Maya will add something where the UVs actually flip them too, but we're going to have to do that manually. So the way that I like to do that is you can select UVs in this workspace. So I know that the side that's new is over here. So since they're on top of each other, you don't know which one you're going to select. But this way, now if I hold Control and right-click and click to shell, now I can flip this and move it over. And then just do what I've been doing, where we then sew these edges. And I want to be careful not to select the edges around the mouth, because then that'll bring my mouth bag back. I don't want that. So let's move and sew. And now we can try unfolding. So I don't want to do that. I'm actually going to want the head to spread out a little bit, I think. Just moving these out of the way. And actually, yeah, I can do the same thing here. Just select over these. Actually, I'm just going to do this way because it doesn't really matter. So ear is going to get flipped. Eye. You're always flipping the red one. You want blue to be facing up. This one, I don't even know. This I can actually keep merged together too, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to make sure that I don't have these selected, so I'm just unselecting these. And I'm just going to do a blank unfold. See, this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes when you do an unfold, it just shrinks everything to a ridiculous degree. So I'm just going to use this again to sort of get the spacing a little bit better. But again, this is inside the mouth, so I don't really need a whole lot of space for that. Select my ears and eyes. So really this unfold has come a long way. This used to be a lot more lengthy of a process. So let's see. It's not quite ideal. These are a little bit more stretched than the face. If we turn this on, you're going to see those are kind of red. So I might want to come in and try to, let's see if it'll do it. No. Well, sometimes that's just how it is. You could come in and maybe like split these two. And that'll sort of alleviate the pressure a little bit. Just going to use the standard unfold tool here now. So it's a little more even at least, and then I can just scale it back up to kind of get it lighter. The problem is this inner ear, but again, this is such a tiny little thing, it's going to be kind of black anyway, so not really a big deal. So I'm going to leave these alone for now. I think those are actually pretty good. It's going to get us pretty close to what we want. And again, the ears are probably not going to be the center focus anyway. The ultimate thing is that it's laid out pretty straight, so that's good. So I think the face is, obviously it's bigger than everything else, so we can scale it down. Let's just see what we get with regular unfold does some weird stuff. Let's see what we get from this. Unfortunately, there's no symmetry thing that I'm aware of, so I'm going to try to do it as symmetrically as possible, just kind of going up the middle. Well, that's weird. What was that? Alright, I don't know what's happening there. That's really weird. Ooh, well, apparently sometimes this tool is really bizarre. Never seen that before. Unfold. 2016. Well, that's strange. That is not something that we want to see happen. Alright. Do something real quick. New in 2016 indeed, and moderately broken apparently. I have no idea why that's happening. It's a pretty clean model. Let's see if it happens with just half the model. At the very least, I can kind of unfold all of this the way that I want it to be unfolded. Okay, so I think I'm going to do it this way, and then I'll do a merge and sew. So just make sure everything's really laid out. Nice and clean. So what you want to see is just this grid being pretty much as even as possible. It's not going to be perfect, but you know, you can at least get it close. With the influence a little bit around the eyes. Push this back out a little bit. Okay. Get this corner. So again, I'm just kind of trusting the tool. So I think that's a little bit better. Yeah, it looks pretty good here. Of course, we just need to make sure now that we start with this one. We're going to just go down the line and select every UV here. Just on this inside. The main thing is because we cannot have a seam down the middle of the face. That is one thing that is like, sure, technically you can, but just don't, because it's going to look really bad. In older video games, you would mirror everything. But nowadays, you're only mirroring certain things because we have enough power in our computers and consoles that we don't really need to. But like on the N64, I think everything was just mirrored perfectly, so you would have a seam across the face, and you just have to be really careful to make the paint tileable. So now let's try doing just a quick unfold. It's more than I want. Okay, I think this too. Oh yeah, that's right. So whatever's selected, that's great. Okay, so I can actually use this tool with that unselected, and it won't actually. Okay, so that's the way to do it. This is really great. I wasn't sure if it would do this or not. So it's pinning the unselected ones, and that is really what we wanted. So you can see as I go through, it's really updating that nicely. So definitely keep that in mind. If there's only a certain area that you want to use this tool on, go into UV selection mode. If nothing is selected, it's just going to influence everything. But if a handful of things are selected, it's only going to influence the selection. So I think this is pretty good. I'm going to call it here. Let's just do a quick mirror again, just to test everything and make sure everything is sewn together. First, let's just look at the model. Everything looks good when I do smooth preview. I don't see any pinching or weird stuff that happens. So that's good. Again, UV selection to shell. Flip that and move it. Let's just sew this back together. Again, being careful not to select the interior edge loops of the mouth. And voila. There we go. And then we'll just make sure that it is to scale. Last thing that I'll show you actually is layout. Yeah, that's looking good. Let's see, so this back together. Just because minimal pieces, it's just easier. So for something like this is pretty small. We can pack this in pretty well. Basically, you always want to take your biggest piece and scale it as big as you can within this texture limit, because anything that goes outside of this texture limit is going to start tiling the other side of the texture, and that's not something that you want to happen. So you need to fit it inside of this space. And you can do this in any of these squares. Just make sure that it fits in the square. This is generally the accepted, like this is +1, +1 in UV space, so you want to put things here. But if you put it here, because of the way that textures work, it will tile and just redo it there. So because this is small, this is easy to lay out. But say we had like a ton of pieces here. You can always try out using the auto layout feature. What the? Oh, the problem is that it's, okay, let's just delete that real quick. So if I do the auto layout, it will kind of maximize all that stuff for me. And the other thing that's nice is, like, say the head is just like way bigger than everything else. And I want to make sure that everything has been scaled, so basically it's all getting the same amount of texture space. Like right now you can see the head's getting tons of resolution because this is such a fine checkerboard, but then the ears are really blurry. So I can, in here, go down to scale mode and go to uniform. Or is that the one? I'm sorry. Pre-scale, I'm going to go to world space, not object. World space means that like it will basically make everything the same size within the world space. Oh, and I have to select the UVs first before I do that. So you see it scales it down, and now the checkerboard is more or less the same. But I actually like what I did better. The nice thing about doing it yourself, Maya will kind of keep everything sort of separated. You can actually pack things in a little bit tighter than Maya is probably going to do for you. Or like if you want to like put the eyes in here, you know. This is a good idea. Something like this, just because you don't want to waste this space. But yeah, there you go. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's how you do a head. I hope that's useful. I hope this whole thing has been useful. Thank you, Letitia. Glad that this was great. I hope that it worked out for everybody. Sorry again about the power outages earlier on. Hopefully this is the last time that I have to do this. But I'm glad that it worked. I'm glad that everyone made it out. So I think that's about it. I'm going to try to get this up on YouTube. I think I can just export it right now. So yeah, have a great night. Have a great weekend. Looking forward to seeing work in progress on this. Again, you can send it to me anytime. Just have it to me before Sunday. It's just a work in progress. It is just to see where you are and to see that you've started it. So yeah, get started and have a great weekend, everyone.